Good evening. This is Lewis Moore, and this is Oklahoma Insurance Watch. Thank you for your time and attention. And should you have any questions, please give us a shout, and you can ask questions while we're live or send us a question or a comment, and we'll address it the next time. Hey, so this is Lewis Moore, and I was a former state representative and former chair of the State Insurance Committee for a number of years and vice chair of numerous others. I was also a member of the health chair and the health committee dealing with hospitals and health insurance and the general health and entities of health for the state of Oklahoma. We'll get into some of those in the future. Health insurance claims is something that I would like to address. And so if you have concerns about those and anything that you might want to see addressed, please let us know. All right. So today I was looking at insurance for homeowners and personal and commercial umbrellas. The fact that it's been raining so much kind of made me think about these umbrellas. I want to also we've had a number of days of bad weather, serious lightning and high wind. So there's going to be some wind damage out there and some wind-driven rain damage. And so if you need an adjuster to help you, please let us know and we will help you in that regard as well. So on homeowners liability insurance and personal auto coverage, there is a element that has to take place before a personal umbrella kicks in. Okay, so for a personal umbrella is an additional coverage you would buy for your homeowner policy. And homeowner policies already cost a fair amount, and that is because of the number of claims, mostly regarding roof claims. So that's why you want to have a good adjuster to make sure that you are getting your house taken care of properly. And the roof is probably, if not one of the most valuable aspects of your home or important, it it's got to be one of the top two. So really, the roof protects everything in your home, and that is the thing that most people worry about first when we have bad weather. Okay. Some people are more concerned with the liability portion, but there's going to be more things that affect your roof, um, and that roof is extremely important. So, for a personal umbrella policy, insurers require that you carry certain minimum liability limits on your homeowners and auto insurance before the umbrella coverage would even apply. So, typical minimal underlying limits required by most insurers, but insurance companies can vary. Okay. When to buy a personal umbrella, that's kind of the first thing. Do we need one? Because you're going to have underlying liability coverage of 250,000, 500,000, up to a million. So for you to have a personal umbrella, which typically starts at a million, you have to have a certain amount of underlying coverage. So for you to get $1 million of personal umbrella, you'd have to have at least 250,000 for some carriers. Some carriers might want you to have 300,000 or 500,000. So that's something that you can check in your policy or ask your agent, and they will tell you. Personal umbrellas do not cost a great deal, and they're great to have, especially if you have certain risks. If you own a dog that may be aggressive, and you'll know what dog kind of dog that is because there's a list of hard to insure, or we won't insure dogs. You know, Great Danes, German Shepherds, Pit Bulls. There's several breeds that they do not want to insure because they don't want to see um, claims for dog bites. Those can be bad. So you have a pool, you have a lake or vacation home, or a boat, a pleasure boat, ski boat, and your kids use the boat and they have kids on the boat, or you have other cars. You have a number of cars. Let's say you have three kids and now you have five cars. So those number of cars are out and about at various times, and you have 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds driving the cars. Um, yes. And especially if you find yourself worrying about stuff like that, definitely get the personal umbrella. Or you have horses. You have a property where you have horses and you let people ride the horses, or you give lessons, you give swim lessons, anything like that, are indicators that you might need a personal umbrella. The other thing is, if your financial planner recommends that you do that, or a family attorney, estate planning attorney, somebody like that, that'd be something, because they're trying to protect your assets and things. Now, um, if you have a homeowner's policy and the required limits are typically 300,000 on that, and that's a personal liability portion of your homeowner's policy, which covers injuries, property damage to others for which you're legally responsible, like somebody slipping and falling on your property. It's icy, they slip and fall and hurt themselves, either on the stairs, outside, or inside the property. That's something that that can lead to that. On bodily injury liability for personal auto, typically, um, let's just say that you have bodily injury, you have a $250,000 per person, $500,000 per accident, and property damage 100,000. And while that seems high, property damage at 100,000, when new trucks can be close to 100,000. These big SUVs, they can be close to 100,000 or more. And so that we used to have 25, 50,000, 50,000 being the auto property liability, property damage for an auto. And we still have 35% or so of the state drivers seemingly, according to the insurance department, without coverage. Now, that's after we increased it. And there's some people that are stating that we need to increase it again, but we still have 35% of the people not buying it now. So just to hedge your bet, if you're concerned about that, that's what a personal umbrella can help you with. Okay. So a personal auto, you can have 250, 500, 100. Remember, that's 250 per person, 500,000 for everybody in the car, and 100,000 of property damage. Or you can do like a $300,000 combined. Watercraft, that is going to be similar to the auto. And why do these limits matter? A personal umbrella policy starting at $1 million will only activate after your underlying coverage is exhausted. So if you're sued for 1.5 million and your auto policy says the first 500,000, your umbrella covers you for the remaining 1 million, but only if you met the minimums. If you do not have the total minimum coverage required by the policy, then you kick in the difference, then the umbrella would cover the rest. So a $500,000 claim, settle for $250,000, and your policy covers you for $250,000, then the personal umbrella kicks in. That it's in excess of what you have limit wise. So you're going to have to cover the 250,000, then the personal umbrella would kick in for anything in addition to that. One of the things also is if your underlying limits are too low, the umbrella won't pay, obviously, until you've met the difference, and that's a critical risk to avoid. And insurance companies are going to have their A team come out. So insurance companies are going to have attorneys that they have on retainer at different law firms or individual firms. And there's a number of insurance companies. So there's a number of attorneys that are defense attorneys covering, protecting the insurance company and trying to limit their liability. So those attorneys are going to be the A team attorneys, the best that the insurance company can find in each and every state to help them. So they operate and as a separate effort to defend against or negotiate settlements on umbrella claims. So they are going to operate in and above what else the insurance company does. So, your net worth may dictate a personal umbrella. And like I said, your financial planner, you may have a business and intertwine the use of autos, property, real estate, that kind of thing. Your bank, your loan officer, your bank officer may recommend that. A smart hospitality, healthcare. You operate vehicles or heavy equipment. You have you own properties that access serving alcohol. So you own property that other people access. So you have restaurants, they serve alcohol, or event locations like wedding locations where somebody can rent that and have the wedding, and you're offering alcohol. That would be a case for a commercial, a policy with high liability exposure. Cost is about the same as a food cost for that, for a wedding. So if your cost is $1,000 for the food, you can multiply that by two if you have an open bar type of coverage. So let's say your cost of providing the food is $1,000, multiply that by two, and that is what you're looking at. Each venue, each restaurant has different alcohol packages, concerns, liabilities. They may do things a little bit differently. Part of the reason for the cost difference is security, servers, and server training and facilities and over serving, that kind of thing. So they cover those risks that that can happen when your business is operating and there's stuff happening all over the place. So you can't be worrying about it as an individual. Providing professional services or advice, if you're an engineer, architect, contractor, and they they do something that causes damage, then then this will cover it. So one of the cases that I had was an Edmond High School was being increased in size. And they were building a portion, a whole nother wing and that kind of thing. Well, they had a architect firm develop a plan for another HVAC unit to cover that amount of area. And they operate in the heat, so they needed to have air conditioning, right? So they provided the plans for it, and it was built. So it was built with the capacity of air conditioning for what they were going to end up with. Well, because of the bond issue that was passed was not enough for the whole thing. But they did put in, so if it's, let's say that it was 20,000 square feet, but they put in the AC unit for 50,000 square feet. So it was more than what they needed. So it caused mold because there's more moisture in that air that they were pumping in. And so there was a claim for that damage that was done, and they had to pay. So the firm had to pay, but also there was a little bit of a settlement in what they had told them to do. But it got messy, and there was an adjuster involved. There were other people involved because we were talking about a lot of money, and we were also talking about the voters wanting or not wanting to vote for another bond issue to cover the loss, especially when it was a lawsuit. And those kind of things can get pretty messy and take some time. So um, so definitely you want to have that so that you can use that as leverage or um, in negotiating. Okay. Also, if you're engaged in potentially hazardous operations like construction or multiple stories of construction and water, wastewater systems and that kind of thing, that can be something that's going to need umbrella coverage. Let's just say that you, as your business, you have significant assets to protect. You own property, equipment, you have cash or investments, or if you're personally liable, like a sole proprietorship or a partnership, an umbrella policy can protect you beyond the standard liability limits. And it's very common to have um, higher limits, um, starting at least 500,000, but typically in this time, at least 1 million is standard. And that is because of inflation and the size of claims that people are initiating. If you have contracts that require higher limits, and sometimes your clients, your business, and you have clients, your business, and you want to do a job for a municipality or um, a larger business, they're going to require you many times to have an increase in liability coverage. They're going to ask that you have 2 to 10 million in liability coverage at least. You know, if you're an electric contractor like we had in Edmond that went to work on the new stadium at OSU, the football stadium, he had to have a large um, commercial umbrella for that jobs that they were doing over there. And they had to have proof of that. And that's what's going to come up here as well. So you have to have proof of individual coverage for projects or vendor contracts, especially in construction, utilities, public works, like a certificate of insurance. And a certificate of insurance is also called a COI, and that's common in government contracts and commercial leases and professional service agreements. So like I said, if you're building or doing work and helping a school system, that kind of thing, that's a government contract, okay? And many of your clients are going to also have reinsurance. So if they have reinsurance, that is a way of reducing the cost to the primary insurance carrier. And if you don't go out and get reinsurance, they're getting it for themselves to lower the cost and spread the risk out. So whenever you see a company and they have RE after their name, like Swiss Re, that's Swiss Reinsurance or Munich Reinsurance. So those investors are investing in a company that they're not taking on the first line of claims. The first line of claims are going to be filed with the insurance carrier. And only after those claims, either in number or in volume, as a higher claim than they insured with them, then it kicks into the commercial umbrella. Well, if most of these companies, they do not want to tap their reinsurance coverage. The reinsurance coverage is less costly. It costs about 40% of the underlying coverage, but they still do not want to tap it. And they will have another set of attorneys that help them as well. So you may want to protect against large, unpredictable claims. Even with strong risk management, things like major auto accidents involving your employees. So slip and fall accidents on your property. And there are teams of, and it's not positive, teams of people that go around and putting together slip and falls as to try to get to like a convenience store access their med pay. So their med pay might be $10,000 on a commercial policy. And so they're going to try to tap that and get that paid because they'll pay those med pay or medical payment claims pretty quick. So whenever you're over by the ice machine and getting a fountain drink, so if you see somebody keep pressing the ice down or the water down and making the floor slippery and then falling right there, that's the kind of thing that is a slip and fall pretender. But it could be a for real deal, somebody not knowing how to stop the water or the ice. And the same thing at grocery stores, having something fall and break, and then it spreads the water or the fluid on the floor. And a lot of the floors are made of tile, and so if you fall, you can cut yourself or have a slip and fall claim. I've even seen one in the front of a building during the snow where somebody did most of the sidewalk, but not all of it, and somebody fell and it slipped and fell. Product liability or environmental claims can result in claims exceeding $1 million, and exceeding $1 million anymore in these markets are not necessarily unusual. And that's typically the cap on general liability and auto liability policies. Umbrella policies, they can provide cost-effective peace of mind. And for an example, an extra million might only cost you, a million in coverage might only cost you $500 to $1,000 a year, depending on your risk profile. So with a personal umbrella on your personal homeowner's policy, those might only cost you like $200. It really depends on all the discounts you get and the type of coverage you're otherwise getting, ACV or and all the things that you have on your policy already. Okay. But if you're interested, all you got to do is ask your agent and they will give you that information. And they'll probably ask you some questions also. You employ staff, especially in public facing roles. So, employers' liability and auto related incidents like driving on the job are common lawsuit sources. And you don't have to watch television, see ads for auto claims or truck claims to see that there are attorneys that are good at these type of claims. Umbrella insurance can extend those coverages if a severe claim is made. Roofing materials, placing materials on the roof. I had a client one time who had an employee that put a lot of materials on one spot on the roof, and the roof caved in and damaged the roof, materials, and the interior of the home. The home happened to be outside of a city limit because city limits, when you have uh, planners and you have people that are looking at you got to go there to get a permit. Well, they're looking at what you got and where you're going to locate the home and everything, and they're going to make sure that your trusses and everything are up to code. Well, sometimes when you go outside of the county, outside of the municipal area, they're not going to ask you those things. So that is something you need to make sure that are addressed. Okay. And trusses may not be substantial enough to handle the weight. In this case, they weren't, and they weren't even fastened with brackets or something, some other means that could more securely hold them. Building codes outside the city limits and sometimes in smaller municipal areas might not be as strict on quality. And if they can't handle the weight, how are they going to survive and wind uplift or tornadoes? Um, and how is the garage built? Because when you have uplift and that wind can get inside your garage, like if you don't have good enough garage doors or don't, the wind can push that in, and that is a big space that wind can go up in and rip off the roof or damage um, your cars and the inside of your garage. I had when I worked at a agency, we had a guy who was insuring, we insured a lot of car dealers. And this car dealer let his son use a car for the prom. So it's like a Corvette or something. And they got into an accident that killed somebody. So that was a big claim. And roofer, gutter replacement. So there was a very nice neighborhood in Oklahoma City where they hired a person to come in and replace their gutter system. Okay. They were putting in copper, right? Copper gutters. So they needed to do some spot welding and some soldering. And for some reason, it sparked and went into through the vent into the um, into the roof and caught fire in the insulation inside the roof through a vent. And that caused a lot of damage to the house as no one saw it immediately. So it had time to really catch fire and it caused a big problem. Well, that commercial umbrella or commercial liability insurance and commercial umbrella are the things that would cover that thing. So something like that. So if you have a fleet of cars on the road, and a lot of people do, if you have an HVAC or plumbing operation, something like that, you have people going all over the metro. And any of you been out and about 8 in the morning, noon, 5, it can be crazy tricky out there. And to have somebody trying to rush to another job or handle an issue over the phone while they're driving, something like that, or not being properly trained can cause a problem. So when we had fleets, what we would do is every 6 months, we would run a driver check. So we would get a list of all the drivers, a list of their driver's licenses, date of birth, and that kind of thing. And really, we'd start with the age. If they were less than 25 years old, and 25 years of age on most automobile coverages, you're going to get a price break. That's the first big price break is if you have a kid and you're still insuring them with their auto and they're turned 25, that it's going to be less. Same thing if you're a contractor and you have people driving for you that are under age 25 and they turn 25, it'll be a much safer thing. There are some carriers that will not cover drivers who are under the age of 25. And so other contractors like builders and that kind of thing, or sales operations or stores, anybody that has to have people driving out and about doing business for them, dropping money off, whatever, um, that can be a tricky thing. And you are going to have a claim. If you have a fleet of cars and you have a personal auto that you're insuring in your fleet of cars, you just have to be ready to disengage if your child is being insured by the commercial auto policy because it's less and you can write it off and everything. Because if they're 16, 18 years old, I've always advised the business owner not to put their child or other person on that policy. If they do have an accident, you have to take them off immediately, or you could risk getting canceled, getting your car insurance policy canceled. And some of the things like that are things that can go on to um, the risk analysis where everybody else can see it. So somebody else, you want other coverage with another carrier, they can see that that was what it was for. You're getting terminated, and they very well might not want to take you on. So if you just have in the back of your mind, hey, if something happens, I've got to bail out on that coverage, then it's better not to even have them on there in the first place, but you need to have a plan. Okay, operate in a litigious environment. If your business is in a region, industry, or market that's prone to lawsuits, or if you're already had legal claims filed against you, an umbrella coverage can help manage the future risk. Some clients will ask you for a certificate of insurance. So let's just say that you're a contractor and you're going to go do some work for a school or a homeowner. They should ask you for a certificate of insurance, and that would summarize all the coverages that you have in place and the policy numbers. Why do you do that? That proves that you have coverage, and then if there is a claim, it allows your client to be able to follow up or manage the claim because they have the correct information. So it doesn't cost you anything to get the COI, certificate of insurance, but it gives the client the name, address, contact information to verify coverage or in use to help in a claims issue. So that's just being transparent, but they may very well ask for that. Like they're going to ask you for proof. Remember, you hear about that all the time, or you see it on the side of some trucks. Bonded and has work comp insurance because you don't want to, if you hire somebody without those things, sometimes it can fall back on you depending on what the attorney goes after. So I had a client who had a roofer on his roof, and it was only a one-story house, but he literally watched the roofer fall right off his house. Landed in good grass, softer ground, didn't hurt him. He got back up, but still, that was disconcerting. A certificate of insurance is a standardized document that comes from your insurance company or agent or broker. So um, you can ask the agent, hey, can you get me a certificate of insurance? They should be able to get it to you right away and actually even print it off on their computer. If you can't get a hold of them, then quickly enough, then you just contact the company. And how do you do that? Use your policy. On the deck pages, their number should be on there. And it serves as proof that your business has active insurance coverage, including general liability, workers' comp, commercial auto, professional liability, and some kind of excess liability coverage or umbrella. Okay. And who issues that? Again, that's your agent can go to a tab and request and deliver that either by email, or he might even want to come see you personally and deliver that personally to you. Either way, keep that with your policy, okay? And because multiple people may need a copy of your certificate of insurance. The insurance carrier provides the actual policy information, and the COI is generally um, generated using the Accord 25 form, which is an industry standard form. So when you're asking for an agent to get you a quote, and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, I'd like to give you a quote, they're going to have to fill out these different Accord forms to get the carriers to get you coverage. And so there's been people that would say, I'm going to get my top 10 people get you a quote. Typically, for any kind of risk, there may be 3 or 4 companies that will actually be able to deliver coverage for the business that you're performing. So when they say, I'm going to get you 10 or 20 quotes, or I'm going to quote everybody I got, most of them are going to deny giving you a quote because that's not going to be in their wheelhouse. That's not going to be a market in which they really want to get into or can be competitive on. So they're not going to waste their team's time and effort to do it. Okay, because it takes a lot of effort to fill out the forms and to submit them and then follow up on the stuff and the risk control, risk management that has to be done. They're not going to want to do that. So they're only going to want to do stuff on ones that think they can be competitive on. And that's not a bad thing. What's included on the COI? Okay. They're going to have insurance company details, the policy holder's name and address, the types of coverage, the policy numbers, effective and expiration dates so you can see if the coverage is even in force that you're giving to your client to show as proof of coverage. Your coverage limits, and so you can already see if your limits are not high enough that if you wanted an umbrella, you wouldn't be able to, you might be able to get one because they'll let you pay for it, but it wouldn't be in effect until another 250,000 or 500,000 is in place. And typically the coverage limits for a commercial umbrella are going to be much higher than a personal umbrella. The certificate holder, that's the person or company requesting the proof. And then there's something called an additional insured. And that, if that's been requested, that will be on there as well. Okay. So when do you need a certificate of insurance? When you sign a contract or lease, many times they're going to want that right that are there or give you a short deadline in which to get it to them. When bidding on government or commercial projects, they're definitely going to want that. So if you know ahead of time, you have that all ready as part of your bid. When hiring subcontractors or being hired as one, you want to have that in place. That way the people know and feel safe to have you on their property doing work. To meet a lender or investor requirement or to show coverage for events, venues, or work sites. A lot of people don't know about that, but it would really be good for you to have it, even though you're not going to give it to anybody. Exercise the system and make sure you have it. And that way you know that you're good and you should have a feeling of peace and security in knowing that and having that piece of paper, especially if everything is accurate. And you can double check what is accurate or not accurate by your declaration pages in your binder that you have your policy or policies in. And you can just double check them real quick. Um, so you buy a commercial umbrella when you want extra protection above your general auto or employer liability, which is work comp limits. You want to protect assets or meet contract requirements. So they're going to say, hey, we're happy to have you bid on this. We'd love for you to bid on this, but we need you to have a $10 million general liability or liability policy. And commercial umbrella, they'll require some additional things that they'll check out to make sure that that risk is within something that that's manageable. So you want to manage catastrophic risk affordably. So you find out how much is that going to cost. So a number of years ago, a $1 million commercial umbrella was like $18 to $2,000. Okay, because that's a much bigger element. It's not just you and your home and your family. It is people that you're hiring that can cause loss. And um, even if you're a family-owned business, they're going to do proper risk control to see. And some of them, depending on what time of year it is, they're not going to want to take on any more risk than maybe they would have at the beginning of the year. So maybe they don't want to take on like companies that do a lot of homeowners. I was at a fire out by Jones one time, and I was in the insurance department's RV that was their operations vehicle, and they could pull up all of these certain companies' policies. So I think Farmers was out there, and I got in their vehicle. We looked up at Farmers, and there was a number of red squares representing homes with their coverage. Well, what they did after that was they limited coverage by a third. So they um, unattached themselves as the insurer on a number of businesses because of the fire hazard risk. They did not want any more than what they had already taken on. So you should be able to request, and now if you're an additional insured, okay, that's an important thing. Um, the COI doesn't cost you any money to have, and you need to do that just as a transparent part of doing business. If you're additional insured, you're hiring somebody like a contractor, vendor, or a service provider to work on your behalf or property, and you want legal protection under their insurance. So you have a job to do and you need a good plumber. So you go out and you hire your friend in his business as to do the plumbing part of the business. So let's just say there's a new housing development going in and there's multiple things that have to be done. So not everybody can do everything. So you hire the best um, home plumber to come in, and they do all the stuff for that part of the job, which is early on. Okay, they do that for 25, 50 houses, whatever. And now if they do something that's wrong, and now they've multiplied it by 25 or 50, now you've got a big issue. Okay. So you are going to want to be an additional insured on their policy. So you tell them, hey, I want to be an additional insured on your policy. It costs them money, not a great deal of money, but it costs them something to have you put on because that's an additional risk. Um, Even though it's you doing the work, them doing the work. Now, when you're an additional insured on somebody else's policy, you're covered under their policy if a claim arises from their work so that they don't include you on the claim. They're the plumber, they did the plumbing work, but you hired them and they were only there doing the work to cover a contract that you got. And so they're going after you and your judgment and their their work because they're working for you. Their insurer may defend and indemnify you for lawsuits resulting from their actions. So that general liability and any kind of commercial liability will help cover you and avoid tapping your insurance policy, which is very valuable. And so you have peace of mind knowing that I hired this person, I'm an additional insured on their policy. So if they mess up, their policy covers me. And so one of the things that you do when you are the additional insured is you're getting the certificate of insurance, which is also including on that piece of paper that you're an additional insured and to prove that that happened. Okay. They just didn't say, yeah, I'll make an additional insured on my policy. And then lo and behold, they didn't. You get the COI and it's got it on there. And so if you don't have that, you might get pulled into lawsuits and have to rely solely on your own policy. Okay. So the cost of doing that, insurance carriers will typically charge $0 to $100 per additional insured listing. Okay. And for you that is no cost. For them, it might cost them $100 to list you as an additional insured. And some carriers will offer unlimited blanket additional insured endorsements for a flat fee. So it might cost $100 or $250 for them to put on anybody that asks to be an additional insured. And it's their premium cost, not yours. Okay. And then getting written confirmation via the certificate of insurance is a big deal. Make sure you're getting that your name specifically under the blanket additional insured endorsement. So your name specifically is listed, not necessarily the company. And if they list a company, make sure they list your name and the company. Ask for primary and non-contributory wording if you want their policy to pay first in the claim, and you definitely want that. Okay, you want to be the primary additional insured. Okay, so you want them to pay on behalf of you first. Okay, that is it for that. We went over a lot of stuff. Okay, we went over a lot of stuff, and one of the things that I would recommend that people do is not just meet with your insurance person over the phone one time a year, but meet with them like you would meet with a financial planner. So you meet with a financial planner maybe once a year, but you might want to meet with your insurance person multiple times a year. There are different aspects to that. There's employee benefits. That can be a separate visit. Your general liability and business policy and all the things that go into that. Things happen throughout the year, every year, that can cause things to be different. There may be a reason for you to bring risk control in on a job that you're thinking about doing, and you're saying, man, it's going to stretch us a little bit more than what we're comfortable with, but we want to do it. So you bring somebody in to check out all of your stuff, and they bid, and maybe even the site that they're wanting you to go to or work on, and you just check things out, and they'll say, you really need people with this degree of expertise or experience, and we need to adjust the policy for this, or you're going to need this kind of equipment, and you have that, you have the people that are licensed for that, and trained for that, and have they done it before, those kinds of things. So then health insurance, also retirement planning for you and for your employees, all those kinds of things. You don't want to try to do that all in one fell swoop, but you should do that in 3 or 4 visits on a quarterly basis, so that it's professional, and you meet with them at their location, or they come to your location. I always like to go to my client's location so that I can see things that you wouldn't otherwise see. So when I saw a warehouse full of 100 HVAC units that were brand new boxes, I knew that they were working on some bigger stuff. Well, I got a price break for buying X number of HVAC or air conditioning units, and he thought, well, if I can get the business, I'm going to make an extra 20% or 25% on the work by already buying these ahead of time. And that was very aggressive, and he actually did it. That requires a marketing plan and some other things, and then also being known for doing good work. If you have questions or concerns about anything
appreciate you